Drum Technique Academy family. We are back once again with our weekly Q&A lesson, and today my guest is Mr. Eugene Ryabchenko.
Hello guys, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, thank you, Eugene from Flash God Apocalypse. So, at first I want to give you a short overview about today's topics. So, first big topic for today, the pressure swivel and the pressure swivel technique and the 3 things you have to know, according to Eugene, about the pressure swivel to get going. That's the first big topic. Second big topic, mid-tempo double bass and the pedal settings that Eugene is using and the muscle groups that are involved in that process, because he's got extreme pedal settings and you need to know and have to train certain muscle groups to be able to play mid-tempo stuff with those extreme charge copito settings he's got right now. Third big topic for today, hand technique. We're gonna talk about the 2 most important things when it comes to hand endurance and Eugene's basic hand technique today as well. Now let's start with the first big topic, the most important topic for today, the 3 must-know things about the pressure swivel technique.
Which are spring tension, foot position, and the pressure principle.
Yes, so let's start with the first one, the spring tension.
Yeah, so the thing is, first of all, the pressure swivel is a special kind of technique that doesn't really rely a lot on the up and down motion. Usually, like the first thing that you think about when you're playing the double bass is that you're pushing down the pedal, right? So the pressure swivel is like a completely different topic. And the thing is, the name suggests that there is constant pressure. We're gonna get to this in the third question, but the way to make the pressure swivel work, you have to have a certain amount of spring resistance, which can be generated by the certain spring tension. So I would say that if you wanna try out this technique, let's say get into it, the first thing that you all definitely have to consider is to have pretty tight spring tension. It doesn't have to be maximum, and you know, this is kind of a gray area because there are different springs. Some springs are much heavier, some springs are lighter. So like a max Iron Cobra spring is not the same as a max Axis spring or something. So it has to be relatively high. And the way to determine, let's say, if the spring tension is big enough is that you try to push down the beaters onto the bass drum, like I do right now. And it has, like, you have to definitely cause some pressure with the weight of your body in order to keep the beaters in there. So let's say if I'm gonna, you see my feet are positioned quite actually in the upper part of the pedals right now, but if I'm gonna move them down, the beaters are kind of moving a little bit, and you can see that the resistance on the lower position of the footboard is definitely higher. So this is, I would say that, you know, having your feet positioned somewhere in the middle of the footboard would kind of define a good starting point at which you should be able to press the beaters against the bass drums. So basically you have to adjust your springs accordingly so that the spring tension is around in this position. The second thing is the foot position. This is actually like kind of a research topic for everybody who would start digging into the pressure swivel, because there is this sweet spot that everybody keeps mentioning. For some people it's a bit higher, for some people it's a bit lower. And in this particular case, obviously it has to do a lot with the pedal settings that you have and the spring tension that we just talked about. So the thing is, all of this combined actually is like the prerequisites for the third question, the pressure principle. So the thing is, when you're applying pressure swivel, what you're doing is, I mentioned before that you don't have separate up and down motions like you would do in like playing whatever, heel up, full leg motion, or even using just ankles like this. The thing is, you have constant presence of the body weight. So basically you're always kind of sitting on the pedals a little bit. I know this is weird because usually when people say getting into fast double bass should be ankle based and you should sit like this, further away from the pedals. And do this. And with the pressure swivel, it's actually the opposite. So basically this is a technique that goes back to the basics. Like, there's one thing that I would like to talk about here right now is the two feelings, two ways of playing the bass drum, the pedals. It's actually very well defined in Russian. It's called like игра в бочку, игра от бочки, which means to play into the bass drum and play away from the bass drum. So basically, when you're starting from the very, very beginning, think about Lars Ulrich, Dave Lombardo, playing full leg, upper leg, double bass, like this. Caveman style. So you are actually basically sitting on the edge of the chair usually, and you're leaning a lot into the bass drum. So you're playing into the bass drum. When we're talking about guys like Kerim, for example, utilizing ankle motion, ankle swivel, or actually Jokke Valken, also he sits far away from the pedals, and this is like the feeling that you're going for is pushing yourself away from the pedal. And that's thanks to sitting on the chair like further away from the bass drum, and also like in the, let's say, back part of the rear part of the chair. And this kind of gives you a feeling that you're not pushing inside, but you're pushing yourself away. So imagine that you want to just push yourself away from the bass drum. And this is like, it makes easier to use ankles. And now with the pressure swivel, which is actually used for very high tempos, you go back to pushing inside the bass drum, which is kind of weird. So this is like basically forget everything about ankle motion and go back to the caveman intuitive double bass technique. So the reason we go back to this to this playing into the double bass thing, to cause constant, very important that it's constant pressure of your whole body on the pedals. So basically what you're doing, like if you observe my feet now, I'm pushing the pedals into the bass drum. And basically what you're doing, now you start to wiggle, I'm wiggling my foot. But as you can see, the beater is not leaving the bass drum head. And what you're doing, because like the reason for this is because the resistance is too small in the upper part of the footboard. So what you're going to be doing is that you're wiggling your foot, applying constant pressure with your full body, and then you're moving your foot down where the resistance is bigger, and I can no longer keep the beater on the bass drum with my full body. And this wiggling kind of loosens the pressure. And the lower you move, the harder it is to cause constant pressure with your upper body, and the bigger angle you're gonna get with wiggling. But the thing is, it's very important that your body, even though having your foot down here, your body is still constantly pushing. Again, this is not separate foot movement up and down, not separate hits. It's always constant pressure with your body, but you're just positioning your foot lower where the resistance is so much higher that you're just unable to keep the beaters on it. And then you just like this. That's the pressure principle. And as you can see, it is all built around certain spring tension and certain foot position on the footboard. So basically, if you have, let's just take a look at the case when you have very loose spring tension, that would mean that you would push the beater and keep it easily. And even if you go much, much lower, the spring tension is loose, so you would still be able to keep the beater on the bass drum, and wiggling your foot like this wouldn't actually cause the beater to move.
DTA family, we're gonna post close-up pictures of Eugene's current pedal settings in our closed Facebook group as well today. All right, so great, Eugene, please.
And the same with the foot position, because like, you know, the lower you move, the harder it is to keep the beater on the bass drum.
Awesome. Thank you, Eugene. We got one more question from Jeff, one of our students. At what BPM do you normally start the pressure swivel at? Approximately.
Okay. Yeah. The thing is, as we just discussed, pressure swivel is like requires certain pedal settings. So the thing is, in order to, let's say if you know that you have to play very high tempos like 250, 260 and above, you have to always keep